grateful. I'm really appreciative for all that I have, all that's around me, all that God allows me to experience.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the hug.
You're very welcome. No, we don't have a. She's right. It's Father's Day is every day. She's right.
Yeah, so as you can see or hear, that was the interaction that I had with one of my neighbors. Some people may call her the crazy lady because, you know, she comes off that way. However, what I appreciate about this neighbor is that she wishes me happy Father's Day on a regular basis. And I don't, if you could hear the guy who was sitting next to her, he says, well, Father's Day is a month in May, because I think it was like May. It's like the middle of May, and she's wishing me happy Father's Day. And, I had to correct him. Like, nah, she's right. Father's Day is every day. It's not just this one little space, or it can't be contained into one day, which is how many people that around me tend to think about fatherhood, which is why I do this podcast, which is why I like to share with you.
I shake my head and look around. It's sad, sad. You should know the black dad ain't a bad dad, but it's too many in a crisis like Sudan. Let me be.
Greetings and welcome to the Reaching Father podcast. I'm your host, Osa. This is the podcast where we talk about fatherhood and whatever else I can squeeze in that's related to the topic at hand. So thanks for joining me. This is episode number 8. 8 is my favorite number. 8 is my favorite number. 8 is my favorite number. So happy Father's Day. On this day is actually Father's Day, this day. So I'm really appreciative just to be able to start this dialogue, start these conversations in this time that has been so far. It's only been a short time, but it feels like it's been a good time. And so I appreciate those that have been supporting, listening on all the different streaming apps, leaving reviews or follows in the YouTube, of course, those that drop comments and give feedback, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. It's very, very helpful because I want to have and engage in more dialogues, especially if you're a father and if you've got thoughts on these topics. I'd love to hear them from you. So send me email at reachingfatherpodcast@gmail.com. If you're a father listening to this and you've got some thoughts, and or jump on YouTube and leave a comment. That's always appreciated. All right, so we heard from my crazy neighbor, and I say crazy lightly, with love and respect. Actually, I don't really mean it like y'all hear it sometimes. It just means that she's different from everybody. And you see, this lady who many will call the crazy lady wishes me Father's Day every day, and the male next to her thinks that she's probably crazy for that. But is she really? Is it really crazy to wish me happy Father's Day in August? Especially if you see me with my children almost every day. Yeah, I wonder how we got to that. Anyway, like I said, this is episode 8. I'm going to make this actually the last episode of this season. So this is kind of like the season finale. Whoop, whoop. One, because I'm going out of the country for the next couple of weeks. And so with that, I'm going to come back refreshed and have new awakenings and new ideas and a new spirit and a new attitude. So I want to give myself time to kind of readjust when I get back. And then also, I just like 8. I mean, 8 is a great number to end on. So I'm gonna take a break for that, and then come back, revamp a few things, tweak some things, and get it cracking once again. I'll talk a little bit more about what I want to kind of go through and happen in the second season, but I thought that for this episode, I thought that it would be appropriate to kind of really frame what I did in this first season and kind of what my intentions were. I would say overall, I believe the idea that I was trying to get across was the idea of finding our own truth and clearing out the barriers, clearing out the the trash in order to get along on this path called fatherhood. So, I mean, the first episode, just, kind of get to know me and understand kind of where my perspective comes from. But then in that second episode, I think the sins of the father, where I was addressing what I would call the cost of entry. Like, what are the costs that you've had to pay to enter into this journey of fatherhood? Did you not have a father? That's a high cost to pay as far as learning about fatherhood and what that means. That's very, very high cost. Did you have a father like myself? My father is around. Did you have a father around to see? We all have fathers. 100%. Well, let's say 95% of the children born on this planet have fathers. And so when I say that, I feel weird. Did you not have a father? I mean, everyone has a father except for the few that were born out of immaculate conception. I'll leave room for those children, but everyone has a father. But were you able to have a relationship with your father? That's what I mean about the higher costs to entry. And a lower cost to entry is, well, did you have a relationship with the father, right? Because that makes a big difference in your understanding of fatherhood, or even lack thereof. And so in episode 2, I was talking about that, right? And the sins of the father. And also I was talking about thinking like a father, and went into a really challenging space of looking at someone like a Kyle Rittenhouse as someone's child. And what if you were the father of that child? It's really controversial to think like that, I guess. However, because I have grown up the way that I've grown up, I've always wanted people to show humanity to me and see me as a human. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that, okay, well, I would try to apply that as universally as possible. And I think, kind of spreading that idea out is really going to be critical to us as we look at this life. Like, thinking like a father is important, and understanding what fatherhood comes with. You don't get to have it your way all the time, or rarely, or maybe even ever. So I think it's also important to realize that as fathers, it's not the most appreciated job out there. It's one of the toughest jobs, right? One of the toughest jobs you'll ever have. Also, I think that it's important in that episode appreciating the good fathers, which they don't really get as much attention as like the bad fathers, or the fathers that weren't around, or the deadbeat daddies, XYZ. And I think it's important to kind of realize the sins of the fathers, yes, but also highlight the good deeds of the many fathers that are out here doing good, and be mindful about how we talk about these men, and in turn how we treat the women who relate to these men. So all of those can either contribute to or take away from our sins, right? And sins just being a spiritual context, not so much religious, but just something that goes against what we intend to do in this life. Then there was episode 3, The Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I talked about that movie, and that was talking about this. I was going into like a bones through the nose philosophy, to whereas the modern ways of thinking aren't really conducive to a lot of men, because modern times are kind of dominated by philosophies, adopted by many women, and kind of women kind of push a lot of the narratives and the agendas, which is fine in a gynocracy. However, if you're a man, then a lot of it is going to clash with what you understand and what you're able to intuit naturally, right? Bones through the nose is like, a tribal kind of natural philosophy that goes against what's modern. And so being able to navigate both of those things, but understanding that is there, is kind of what I was trying to pull out in talking about the Planet of the Apes, right? Because they were reverting back to, nature. That's kind of like what that was about. And that helps. And in doing that, right, building on ourselves, building our vibrational levels and our sense of self, and becoming the father of our own domain first. becoming the father of our own lives, leading our own selves first. And then that's how we got into, then episode 4 was talking about pulling up other men, having, good relationships and good brothers in your circle. You need good men around you. Not only be a good man yourself, but then how can you raise the vibration of the men around you? Because like I say, with the issues in the community, I don't believe we need more fathers because again, almost every child has a father. So we don't need more fathers, we need better men. That's just where I stand on that. In any community, you don't necessarily need more fathers, you need better men, because most of these children have fathers, unless they were born out of immaculate conception. So it's not so much they need more fathers as it is that we need better men. And then being able to decide what that is, what those principles are. Who are we currently elevating as fathers, and what type of fathers are they? And what examples are we showing young people for what fatherhood and manhood looks like? That all becomes important. And then episode 5, it was crime and punishment. And there I was emphasizing the importance of how it takes a village to raise a child. We looked at, I think it was that video, I think it was in Buffalo. I think it was like Buffalo, New York, or upstate New York somewhere, where the child was accused of stealing from the store, and then the police got involved, and then they took him home, and there was his father. And his father talked about how difficult it was. He was working, and his wife was home sick. So, it was a 2-parent household, but the children were still engaging in behaviors that will definitely lead them to jail later. So even having a 2-parent household, it makes it tough. And we're struggling with that. It requires more than that. It takes uncles and aunties and, step parents sometimes, and mixed blended families are often can be strong if we let them. So because it takes a village. And then encouraging like other fathers to be able to hold children accountable in the community. We don't have a lot of that. That's important too. Because if my father is at work and I'm a child, my father's at work, and then there's other, fathers or male figures around, how can they be supportive in covering when I'm not around? So that was episode 5. Episode 6 was a flamer. It was dedicated to Kevin Samuels, where the focus of the episode was to talk about where do we focus on energy. Where do we focus our energy as far as talking about men and then talking about relationships. There are good and bad men out there. I think that by highlighting Kevin Samuels was for me to point out what I kind of believe and what my experience is, which is, you can be like a well-dressed, articulate man making good money, and you'll still go unappreciated, and what you have to say won't be valued, which is what I thought was ironic about Kevin Samuels. And so the reason why I think that that's important is so that we as, regular, just average, everyday Joe guys can be realistic about what we're up against and understand and be ready for, the challenges that are going to come along with it, especially when you're a man and you're resolute. And especially as a father, some of the things that I tell my children, I'm sure I'm like the only person to tell them that, which therefore makes it easier for them to look at me as an outlier, or to make it look like I don't have their best interest in mind, because some of the things that I tell them, they're not hearing from everybody else, right? And so as a father, you're typically that person, and it's a tough job. So you have to be prepared for the heat. You have to be prepared to be resolute and stand firm in what you actually believe in. Again, going back to the other episodes, that's why establishing principles and establishing a foundation for who you are is important, because you're going to have to hold it up very, 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 very strong. Hold that wall up very, very strong if you're really going to be in this role as a father, which is a privilege and an honor. And then episode 7, the last episode, started talking about the sister who was disrespectful to Martin Luther King. Again, I mean, even Martin Luther King can get it. So in these days and times, right, in these modern days and times, in this gynocracy, as it's called, it's free for all for even a Martin Luther King to be disrespected. So again, really have to understand what we're up against as fathers in order for us to be realistic about how we're approaching this. And then also too, we got to be thorough. We got to be tough, right? We got to develop tough skin and tough hair and tough nails and everything, because there's a lot going against us, and it's rough out here for us as men and as fathers particularly. So being aware of all of these things and clearing these things out of your path. We don't have time to worry about some of the things that other people get to worry about. We don't have the privilege. The worst experiences that have happened to us don't come from the outside, right? The challenge to fatherhood is first clearing out the stuff from within. That's going to be the biggest challenge for us as fathers. Clearing out the things that are inside of us. Then the other stuff will fall into place. So this season was really about the work that needs to be done on the inside as fathers, even as co-parents, even reflecting on your co-parent's role. It's a lot of internal work that needs to be done. What are we thinking about? How are we really thinking about fathers and the concepts of fatherhoods? Are we able to put on our fatherhood glasses or goggles and really see things through that lens, and how important the things are in life that are around us? The things that we can actually control are important. Having that internal locus of control, I think that's what I'm banging on a lot. I always bang on that a lot. I love talking about that idea, like that I have the internal locus of control. Where can I control things, right? Where do I have control versus the external locus of control? Things that you can control externally. However, there's a lot less you can do to control the things on the outside of you. And getting the having that internal locus of control where you control things on the inside puts you in a position of more power more often than not. That's why I was stressing a lot of these things in the first season, right? It wasn't all this advice. It wasn't really even giving, I'm not really here to give advice. I'm not that great at this fatherhood thing. But I have some experience where I can give advice. I tend to shy away from it sometimes because my advice often falls on dead ears anyway, like just in my personal life, because people are dealing with so many things on the inside that what I have to say from the outside is often ineffective anyway. So I don't really try to be always like telling people what they should be doing and what I think. Here are my tips, and like I haven't gotten there yet. I'll probably get there next season. Next season, which is what it's going to be a little bit more about, right? The stuff on the outside. In this next season, I plan to speak to more people who have expert advice. Not me, of course. I'm talking about other people who have expert advice and can share with me and you, by extension, information about what some of these things look like as far as like co-parenting and co-parenting agreements and co-parenting strategies, dealing with yourself, wellness, internal wellness, health and wellness. That's really, really important. Navigating the court systems, all of the things we'll try to get to. I'm gonna talk to mothers, I'm gonna talk to fathers, parents of all types as much as I can, and in order to facilitate those conversations about what's going on the outside. All right, so that's it for this episode. And I really appreciate everybody that has been rocking this season. If you haven't had a chance, if you're just tuning in, please go back through the episodes. Again, it's never too late to jump in and on the conversations. These things are everlasting and ever going as far as I'm concerned. So if this is like your first episode or your second episode, feel free to go back and listen to some others. That's the other reason I'm taking a break too, is to give some folks some time to digest this content, because it's some heavy stuff, I believe, sometimes. Like I say a lot of these things lightly and I kind of push through them. However, I understand that some of this stuff is really heavy. So this season break, hopefully it'd be a good time for that. So anyway, I'm always appreciative of you. Reach out to me whenever you can, and fathers especially. I want to hear from you too. So thanks again, y'all. Take care. Peace.
Man, honestly, I ain't gonna fake like I got all the answers, because if I did, the world would be in a better place. I know one thing though, is that I know a lot more than when I started this journey. And most of what I know about fatherhood is organic, it's instinctual, and I believe some of it's from the outside, but a lot of it comes from within. And it seems like you can only reach those levels by actually doing it. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad I ain't been sitting around on the sidelines, because this just takes work, man. It's just a matter of putting it in. And it's not easy. We may never do it right, but that's just what we got to do as men, as fathers, as parents, as citizens of the community. That's just what I believe. And to me, that's what it is. I mean, we'll never be perfect, but we can always keep reaching farther. I shake my head and look around. It's sad. You should know the black dad ain't a bad dad, but it's too many in a crisis like Sudan. Let me be transparent like a glad bag. I seen too many men denied. Yeah, it's that bad.